have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
Hey fellow white guys.
It's about to be a new year.
And there's a few things we think you could do a little bit better in 2017.
First off, try to recognize that America was never great for anyone who wasn't a white guy.
Can we all just agree that Black Lives Matter isn't the opposite of All Lives Matter? Black lives just matter. There's no need to overcomplicate it.
Also, Blue Lives Matter isn't a thing.
Discrimination, racism is different. Racism is a structure of power to keep us down, to keep you down. You are a black man. You are kept down by your race, even if you won't accept it. It is a fact of your life.
Right. And they kept saying he's the token black guy on Fox. Right. Now, I'm sure you get plenty of this kind of thing.
Token, bootlicker, Uncle Tom, Sambo Tom, coconut as in brown on the outside, white on the inside, Oreo, same concept, the Antichrist.
Man, you got a whole list.
Because they've got to malign somebody like me. I am a bigger threat to their whole ideology than almost anybody else. A black guy who does not believe that he's a victim, a black guy who believes in hard work and personal responsibility, a black guy who doesn't believe in handouts, a black guy who doesn't believe in the welfare state, a black guy who doesn't believe in affirmative action. I am the antithesis of everything they stand for, and therefore I can't just be dealt with facts and rebutted with facts. I've got to be maligned. I've got to be cast away. I've got to be treated as if I'm Darth Vader. That's what the left does.
Milo Yiannopoulos, Steve Bannon, and Ben Shapiro. What do these men share in common? They're all white supremacists. Or at least, that's what the left would have you believe. And with that, we have the topic of today's video, white supremacy. This self-descriptive term seems to have resurfaced in the last few months, largely by the mainstream media in their crusade against Donald Trump, and in a broader sense, the right. The overuse of this term follows a disturbing trend set by the left of relabeling terms to fit a loosely defined box of meaning. As previously mentioned, the meaning of the phrase is self-descriptive. We are going to be looking at the proper definition, as well as the alternative definition, given to us from the left, and finally, the consequences of abusing those kind of accusations. So let's get right into it. The key word here is supremacy. Supremacy implies a position of superiority. In essence, one person believes himself to be above another based on the means solely of ethnicity. You already know this, but it's important to make clear with the recent butchering of the term. So in the case of white supremacy, whites being better than any other race solely on their ethnicity. There are some real examples of white supremacy throughout history, especially in the United States, and in a broader sense the New World, as multi-ethnic societies gave rise to segregation based on skin color. L. Frank Baum, author of The Wizard of Oz, wrote in 1890, "The whites, by law of conquest, by justice of civilization, are masters of the American continent, and the best safety of the frontier settlements will be secured by the total annihilation of the few remaining Indians." This was happening during a time when an American identity truly began to come into its own. As the last vestiges of the frontier were being conquered and settled, there was a sense that a standard of culture needed to be maintained through the domination of white hegemony. Many deemed as non-white were barred from government jobs and restricted from owning private property. There are other examples. Belgian rule in the Congo or direct British rule over Ireland during the Industrial Revolution come to mind, a period in time when Irish peoples were seen as non-whites themselves. These are examples of one ethnoculture group dominating another, deemed as being lesser than themselves. Disgusting and important, but common practice in pre-modern societies. Supremacy isn't just limited to whites either. Some of America's greatest civil rights activists have been racist themselves. A quote from Malcolm X. "Thoughtful white people know they are inferior to black people. Anyone who has studied the genetic phase of biology knows that white is considered recessive, and black is considered dominant. When you want strong coffee, you ask for black coffee. If you want it light, you want it weak, integrated with white milk. Just like these Negroes who weaken themselves and they're raised by integrating and intermixing with whites. If you want bread with no nutritional value, you ask for white bread. All the good that was in it has been bleached out of it, and it will constipate you. If you want pure flour, you ask for dark flour, whole wheat flour. If you want pure sugar, you want dark sugar." The reason we need to enforce this is to steal back its meaning from the left, so that everyone can recognize when this actually occurs, which is also why we shouldn't change or broaden the definition, which leads us to the left's definition of the phrase.
In academic usage, particularly in usage drawing on critical race theory, the term white supremacy can also refer to a political or socio-economic system where white people enjoy a structural advantage, aka white privilege, over other ethnic groups, both at a collective and an individual level. This stems back to the Frankfurt School and their intellectuals redefining the class struggle of society to one based on race, or rather the minority classes of society, struggling against the dominant majority. We'd go more in depth into this, but there's already detailed videos explaining basically what the Frankfurt School is and all the work they did. The links to said videos can be found in the description box. We're just going to try to stay on topic here. The definition of the word here essentially says that if you were born white, you have an advantage over other people in society just because you were born that way. Now, there are three big reasons why this definition is incorrect. Number one is the original sin idea. Number two is judging people based as a collective rather than individually. And number three is it's invisible. So starting off with point one, the original sin idea is in reference to Adam and Eve. Even Adam ate the apple, so now all of humanity are sinners, and there's nothing we can do about it except seek forgiveness from God. The idea here is that since we live in a white supremacist society, white people are socialized into being racist from birth. Thinking like this is dangerous because it removes all agency from individuals and vilifies all white people for simply existing. It basically means that no matter what, you're always racist and always privileged because you were raised that way by society. You'll often hear white SJWs say that they recognize their own privilege and racism and use their voice to speak out. This leads me to our next point. So as previously mentioned, it removes people's agency, but it also divides people. It places whites in their own category and everyone else as underneath them. An example of this is the way leftists talk about each other if they're both minorities, referring to themselves as POC, or people of color. This is inherently divisive because it's essentially pitting these two groups against each other. It also ignores the struggling of white people who are poor or unsuccessful. Bernie Sanders famously said during the Democratic primaries that when you're white, you don't know what it's like, to be poor. So if you've ever had no money and are struggling, you're automatically better off because you're white. In my opinion, this is the most important point, because it ignores people's individual circumstances. White people can and have been oppressive, but so has everybody else. And white people can be poor, downtrodden, and oppressed, and so can everyone else. The final point here is that it's invisible. If you ask a lefty to point out where someone's rights are being violated, they really can't. There are no laws in America and Canada that restrict the rights of POC. What they mean by this is that since everyone is a racist, bias is inherent when white people do anything like hire for a job or create laws or whatever. They point to this as systemic racism and proof of white supremacy. The problem with this logic is that it forces us to accept the original proposition that all white people are racist, which, like we already mentioned, is untrue. The irony here is that it is the minorities that are privileged in many cases because of affirmative action programs and quotas. These are laws that are applied to minorities and women because they're seen as disadvantaged. I'd like to throw the definition of privilege in here for a moment from dictionary.com. A right, immunity, or benefit enjoyed only by a person beyond the advantages of most. So while I said that you can't point to a specific law or program aimed to benefit white people, you can do this with minorities. They enjoy a special privilege over whites. This is hand wave off with the disadvantage excuse, but I find these programs to be racist and discriminatory against minorities. It implies that they're weaker and need to be helped. I personally believe in the same principle as Martin Luther King, that people should be judged by their merits and choices in life, not based on their skin color. Let's talk for a moment about why it's important not to misuse or overuse a phrase. There are two reasons why abusing this term is dangerous. This loose labeling makes the term lose its power. By pointing at someone and saying,
"Shut up, Nazi. Stop spreading your white supremacist hate speech."
Even if they are expressing a completely average or mainstream opinion, you are depowering that phrase and desensitizing the people to its meaning. At the beginning of the video, we provided some real examples of white supremacy. We did this on purpose to give actual examples that hurt people, not the leftist insane definition of white supremacy. There needs to be a crisp, clear definition for these phrases and terms.
Mislabeling people as white supremacists and Nazis has become a recent fad. Most recently, Milo Yiannopoulos, a gay Jewish immigrant journalist, was called a Nazi and a white supremacist. He expressed in a Tucker Carlson interview after the Berkeley riot that,
you know, if you have slightly conservative or even libertarian points of view, especially if you are persuasive and charismatic and funny and effective, like we both are, you will get called the most appalling things. And it's a way of legitimizing, in some cases, as happened last night, violent responses. But
many other conservative speakers like Gavin McInnes and Ben Shapiro also get shouted down and threatened and mislabeled as white supremacists and Nazis. Groups like Antifa and other leftist organizations, and even the mainstream media in Hollywood, have been pushing the idea that violence is a legitimate response to the neo-Nazi threat. Asking questions like, is it okay to punch a Nazi? Or people like David Harbour at the SAG Awards saying,
we will, as per Chief Jim Hopper, punch some people in the face when they seek to destroy the meek and the disenfranchised and the marginalized. And we will do it all with soul, with heart, and with joy.
It is dangerous to break the seal on political violence, and will only end up backfiring, because people you attack will eventually get fed up and hit you back. If you make it okay to punch a certain group of people, whoever it is, you risk people using that justification to hit whoever they want. If it's okay to punch a Nazi, you can just call whoever you disagree with a Nazi. And there you go. You now have a justification for violence. When dissenting viewpoints are presented, we have to respect and try to understand each other, not devolve to censorship and violence. Thanks to all you guys for watching the video.
This is our first one, so drop a suggestion in the comment box if you have one.
And if you enjoyed the video,
why not subscribe?